Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low. It hath no budget, baby. This is the GeekWave I'm doing right before I go on vacation. So if you're watching this on the YouTube channel and you're wondering why the videos are kind of slowed down or I'm late on a couple of things, just know it's because I'm doing my first vacation in years. You know, I don't think I've gone away since the pandemic, which is kind of sad to say. But I get it, and I kind of wanted to, I had another video completely in mind because of current events where I'm like, well, let's just talk about this. I wanted to do it for a while. We'll talk about that one. But I said, no, I'll give it time to breathe before I shit on things for a bit. Let's talk about Superman. That's what I wanted to do instead. So this video and this episode of the GeekWave, we're just going to be talking about what I want to see from a Man of Steel 2, or not even a Man of Steel 2, just from the next Superman movie. I don't know if we'd even call it Man of Steel 2, but we'll get into that in a minute here. Because before we get into that, we do have some news to talk about. And I have a couple of things I just want to say, just to kind of like get into things. So, I guess the first piece of news we're going to jump into has nothing to do with like pop culture. It has more to do with me and my place in pop culture. I want to be a writer. I love writing. I want to find an outlet to put some of my thoughts to paper or just get it out into the world. So, I have started a Substack. I am on Substack. It is completely free. I am not going to be charging anybody for any of the works that I write. Essentially, my Substack is going to be a series of short stories that I have just been floating around ideas for that I just wanted to kind of put somewhere. If, I don't know, somebody wanted to look at my work, I could say, well, it's all here. You could check it out there. Or if anybody just wants to see the kind of stuff I like to write, it would be there. It's just kind of a fun idea. So the time of this recording, the first short story is out there. It's called A Cake for My Aunts. It's about a cartoon, Looney Tunes-esque story. And for each one I do put out, I'm going to put out a companion piece where I kind of like talk about my process and why I've decided to write it that way. I'm hoping to do this every now and then. And I'll be doing an entire video this week talking about it. But if you are interested in seeing any short story I'm going to be writing now or in the near future, it'll be in my link tree if you want to see my Substack stuff. So it'll be there for you. And I just wanted to put that out there if anybody's interested in maybe seeing more stuff like this. I'm hoping I'll be spending more time doing that, considering what's going on some social media platforms. It gives me a new outlet where I could maybe put some words to thought and all that stuff. And I'm thinking maybe not even short stories, maybe I could just like talk about my process or a new outlet to talk about movies or something. So that's there. If anybody is interested in hearing my thoughts or reading my short stories, you can see my Substacks through the Tsunami Studio Substack. It is available for you to check out. Thank you guys if you do that in advance. But some other news that is, pop culture related to bigger things. First off, just a few days after Jeff Snyder kind of like broke the news on his podcast, what is it, like the Inside Cut? I forget what the podcast is called with him and John Roca, where like Daphne Keane is coming to The Acolyte and she will be some role we don't know. The young woman from His Dark Materials and Logan. They're doing The Acolyte. So The Acolyte's starting to film, and we got a little bit more information for it. Carrie-Anne Moss has joined, and we got some information about like it's in the final days of the High Republic when, the darkness that lurks between the walls and destruction of society is coming down and it's seeping into the veins. And you have to imagine we're going to see like a Jedi turn to the dark side. I feel like that's the story we're trying to tell here. And Daphne Keane's going to be in it? Okay. I was already invested in The Acolyte because it sounds like a story taking itself seriously in something that's not connected to old material for Star Wars, and that kind of excites me, and it gives you a chance to do something new. I like that. With Daphne Keane coming on board, I like her. She's fun. She's cool. She's creative. She's adorable. I love everything involved in this so far, so more Acolyte news I'm all here for. Can't wait to see what's going to come from this channel and from that show. Going to be very fun. The Acolyte's just a cool idea. I like that. If you're not reading the High Republic books, I've been reading them. I've enjoyed every single one I've read so far. I got my favorite characters. I have to imagine we're going to see some cross-promotion with one of the younger characters in that mythos, potentially making their way onto the Acolyte. I keep saying Bell Zettifar, but we don't have anybody cast in like the main cast that could play Bell yet, so I don't know. It could be somebody completely younger too. or to somebody completely different. Either way, I'm on board. Can't wait to see what that's going to look like. Also, some sad news, I suppose, if that's something that kind of saddens you, but in real time, we just watched the death of Westworld. Yeah, isn't that crazy? So I remember watching the first episode when it came out 6 years ago, just being like, wow, this is epic and cool. And as the story went on, I thought it was great. I wasn't the biggest fan of the third season. I just think because at the time I had too much going on in the world around me, and I just couldn't focus my energy completely on it. And I was like, this is taking more out of me than I think it needs to. And the fourth season, I haven't finished it, and I was just hesitant to even go back, but I was like, it's good enough. I have no connection to it, but I guess the amount of money they were pouring into it wasn't enough to justify doing another season. All of the actors had their pay or play contracts, so they're going to get their cash no matter what happens. It's just kind of sad that this is the world we live in, where one of the most prestigious forms of television and one of the most prestigious genre features out there, Westworld, was a big deal, but because it came out right before the boom of all of this new insanity that is streaming and straight to video bullshit, it kind of got lost in the shuffle. And it doesn't help that all the bullshit happening at Warner Brothers and Discovery kind of upset it. There's a new report going around by Zaslav the other day. He's like, we haven't had a Superman movie in 13 years. And I'm like, you had one in 9, you dumbass. We haven't had a Harry Potter movie in 15 years. I'm like, yes, you did. Even the one that just came out was 12 years ago. He's a fucking idiot. I cannot stand Zaslav. I think he's bad for this industry, but that's neither here nor there. When it comes to Westworld, it is just sad that a show can't get its chance to finish, because if this was even 2013, and say that's when the first season came out, so 5 years later, 2018, I feel like this would be allowed to finish. But in today's climate, there's no space. It comes back to that illusion of unlimited content, when in actuality we don't have it. We don't have this illusion of unlimited content. We have very limited content, and it sucks and it's annoying. But Westworld, not my favorite thing. It deserved a happier ending than what it got. It's kind of sad this is where it goes, but I get it, I guess. It happens. We move past it and hope better things come along. If they don't, fuck it. No idea. There's just too much, and we'll get into that next week when I talk, or the next time I do a GeekWave talking about the topic I want to talk about. But we have one more piece of news I do want to get into because it's kind of cool. Toho has said, guess what, guys? We got a new Godzilla movie coming out 2023. A new Godzilla movie in 2023? That is awesome. I have waited a long time for another Godzilla. Was Shin the last one they did? I still gotta see Shin. What the fuck is it? Shin Ultraman, but it's awesome. So for Godzilla's 69th birthday, the King of Monsters will stomp back to theaters, this time from one of the most exciting directors in Japan today. Takashi Yamazaki announced. Yeah, so it was announced a couple days ago. I don't think they have a lot of information on it. I heard speculation it could be a World War II idea, and I'm like, oh, you sons of bitches, don't be toying with me. That's awesome. It's awesome. I love me a good Godzilla versus Kong movie, but when you're telling me Toho's guess what, we're doing a Japanese one. Guess what, an acclaimed director in our field is doing it. Guess what, it's his 69th birthday, lol. That's epic. That's epic. And it's not connected to the MonsterVerse, so it's we can do whatever we want. We can make some insane shit. I'm I'll take that any day of the week, baby. Put it straight into my veins. Shin was such a good movie. And maybe I'll talk about Shin Ultraman when I get to it, but I love movies. I just love movies, dude. And I guess because of that, they pushed back, or they pushed the other Godzilla movie back. I don't remember. Whatever. It's cool. Movies are awesome. Toho rocks. I love film. I love film so much. Fucking movies, man. Godzilla's the best. I did a Godzilla video a while ago. I don't feel like I gave it enough appreciation, but I love Godzilla. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, let's jump into Superman and not talk about Godzilla anymore. Okay, let's venture into this timely topic. There's been a lot of discourse lately from channels all over the world talking about the Superman that's coming back, baby. Here's the thing I want to get out of the way right and quick. I don't think I want another Cavill movie. I'd rather we start fresh. I talked about this. I did a whole episode of my series, The Batmaning of, talking about Superman. My idea was, let's just start over. Let's get a new guy, a new Lois, a new Perry, a new Jimmy, a new Lex, a new everything. Start fresh. Whatever the current DCU looks like, I guess they want to piggyback it off of Cavill having good word of mouth. And I feel like Cavill's now more dedicated to the role than ever because he left The Witcher for it, and he was upset with how The Witcher was being handled. Which leads me to believe he's going to have a lot more say in this Superman than he did in the last one. Not to say he didn't have some support. He does seem like a guy who does care about how a character he plays is perceived, and thusly he left The Witcher. So I guess coming back means he's going to have more of a creative reign on the character to get it right. The problem with that also lies in I don't know how Cavill represents the character. And this is the main problem. The main problem with Superman is the underrepresentation or the overanalyzation of the character. So many people perceive him as different things. So many people perceive him as something he's not. The thing in my personal life that drives me the most insane, it happens to me when I talk to people I work with. And I worked with a lot of people in my day. For somebody so young, I've worked with way too many people. We get into the conversation of comics, and the thing I always hear is like, yeah, I can't read Superman, he's too overpowered. And I'm like, oh, do you watch Invincible? They're like, yeah, Invincible's awesome. I'm like, okay, so you don't get Omni-Man, and you don't get Homelander, or the Injustice Superman, without explicitly exploiting the Superman that it's parodying and ripping on. So if you can like that more than you can like the version of him that's nice, it shows to me you are a bad person. And I'm not going to rip on anybody who prefers dark Superman. I'm just going to say is if you can't immediately like the good version of Superman, but you only gravitate to the bad one, that says more about you than it does about writing the character. Because you don't read any comic books, clearly. Everybody who's writing the mainstream Superman understands the value of the character. Elseworlds are different. Stories not in continuity are different. The mainstream Superman is so well written and the character is given his brevity, his chance to be something creative and fun. That's what people do. Modern Superman is as good as ever. The character is not written as this dark, twisted being, and nor should he be. Here's the thing. Again, I don't want to criticize people for don't get the power thing. It's like, well, you haven't seen any supplemental material where the power is offsetted with things that go against him. You are just seeing mindless destruction stuff. The thing is, like, this character can be well written, still being a man of the time he's part of, and having the yesteryear feel, which is what he is supposed to be. And that's the hardest thing for people to get into, is just, like, finding this idea of, like, the perfect being so relatable, when it's fact, you're not supposed to relate to Superman. That's the problem I think a lot of people get wrong. Especially people who aren't fans of the character or not actively involved in this character's world, right? Is they're like, oh, I can't relate to him, he's got too much power. Well, it's like, you're not supposed to relate to him. You're supposed to want to be him. You're supposed to look at him and smile. Like, if he were real, you would feel safe. That's the whole point of Superman. The world would be like, he is a weapon that we have to turn off, but the point is, he's not a weapon you have to turn off. Kids understand that. You know, every time a kid interacts with Superman in a comic book, they get it. He's willing to help them no matter if they want them or if they want him or not. He is there to be the hero that they need. And a lot of people just don't get it. And the world's just a cynical place. It's hard for this character to exist. I say it's hard for this character to exist, but it's not. It's hard for cynical people to get on board with it because they want to emulate something that's as dark and frustrated as them. It's this thing that I always talk about with people I know in my real life. I have a friend who I'm like, if we were to enter your mind, it's Gotham City and you're Batman. And I'm like, why would you want that? If we go in your mind, you should be like Superman where you're the best version of yourself, not this twisted thing that is broken and corrupt. And that's the thing. It's not that Superman's like a perfect being. He's just trying to be a good guy. He's trying his best to make the best of the situation he's been given and use his power for good. And that's a message that is so poignant and powerful and something that a lot of people should represent. It's also why in modern context, when his son, John Kent, becomes this political figure using his symbol for the right things, the people who have certain expectations for Superman will call it woke and clickbaity. When here's the thing a lot of people should understand, it doesn't matter your sexual orientation, the color of your skin, what you say or what you do, Superman is going to find the best in you to uphold his truth, your truth, and make sure everybody is okay. You could be the worst person in the world, he's not going to kill you, he's not going to use his power to beat you senseless, he's going to show you a new path, get you the help you need, or lock you away until you can be rehabilitated. That's Superman. A lot of people just can't get on board with that, which is why it's hard to adapt it today. It's also why Man of Steel was so divisive, and I've talked about this a lot I've talked about this. I am not a fan of Cavill's Superman, nor am I a fan of Man of Steel. Man of Steel was the first time I was kind of like exposed to the character in like a big way. Because I've said it before, I got to Superman very late. Within, I'd say, 5 years, I've really come to develop appreciation for the character. And in those 5 years, I have learned it's going to be a complicated road no matter what you do. Because the Man of Steel has warped the perception of so many young people on this character. And Injustice. Injustice is another one of those things where the game was so big and it made Superman the villain that it suddenly just showed you that this guy's corruptible, and I don't like that feeling. And when you have both of those, you have such a weird perspective of like this man with the power of a god, confused about his place in the world and using it to be a tyrannical ruler. I don't like that. And Man of Steel is like, I like Snyder a lot. I'm a fan of Zack Snyder. I've defended him for a long time. The thing is, he doesn't get Superman's ideology where he's like, I'm conflicted, and am I a god or a man? Do I want them to worship me or fear me? It's like, no, you're going to help them. You don't help them in his movies. You feel like you're burdened by them, and that's not Superman. The weight of the world is on his shoulders, but it's not a heavy weight. That is the key thing, I think, where it's like, he's not going to complain he has to Superman. He's not going to be like, oh, I can't believe I have to go fight Lex again or something. You're like, really, Lex, are we doing this again? Okay, I guess this time we'll see what happens. Even if the world goes against his favor, he's not going to be that. I don't think Snyder got that. So, Cavill coming back, like I've said, he's not my favorite, and I think it might just be because the cards he was dealt, he was never really given the chance to be a proper Superman. And that could be hard, especially for a guy like him who's so handsome and looks so much like Superman. He does look like Superman. As much as I've never been a fan of his interpretation, he does look the guy. So if this is what it takes to get a Superman movie, we have to bring Cavill back, okay. Let's work out some pitches from there and try to drum up some new interest for what this could be. First off, I want to reiterate this, something I've said for a long time and I'm going to stand by. We already have the perfect Superman story in live action, Superman and Lois. That is the perfect contemporary piece, the perfect modern depiction of that character. The problem I see with that is now that Cavill is going to be back and we're going to make Superman a movie star, we're probably going to cancel Superman and Lois, which is so upsetting because you should be able to conjecturally run a Superman on television, a Superman in film, and have people understand they're two separate entities, especially because this one has a child. Now, it is still on the CW, and that is rebranding. Maybe they're going to move it over to HBO Max, but if it's canceled after the third season, I think it's unforgivable. I will stand by this statement. If it's canceled after the third season because of Cavill and because we're trying to focus everything into one umbrella, I will never forgive the DCU because that is the perfect Superman show. Hecklin and Tulloch, Tyler and Bitsy, they have the perfect chemistry for those two characters. It goes back to Reeve and Kidder. It is that good. It is that perfect. And something I've said numerous times, just give them a bigger budget and bring Tyler over to the Robert Pattinson world. If you cross both of those over, he perfectly fits into that world. You don't have to tie him to the rest of the CW. You want to get Benoist back in to be his Supergirl, you can, but you don't have to connect it. He just works perfectly fine there, and that's what they should do. So you can keep those two running conjecturally, and that should be okay. But if we lose it because of Cavill, I'm not going to be happy. And that was always like my big thing. Maybe just make a movie with them in it. You know, we could do like an early day Tyler and Bitsy if we wanted to, and that could be our movie. Like the origins of it. We already have a great costume from like the golden age that he can wear. That would be fine. That would be a good idea, but I don't think we're going to do that because it is Cavill. Things have to be a little bigger and a little bit different. So like I said already, I did do a video of this on my series, The Batmaning Of, where I talk about how I want to make a Batman movie for all the other characters in the DC universe. I had a pitch for a Superman movie in there. I'll reiterate it here just kind of like before we get into other ideas I've been kicking around based on comic books. I will say, with that I said Alexander Ludwig, if we want to reboot it, get a younger guy who started off in some of those genre shows, the young adult stuff, kind of like Pattinson did, and you could connect it that way. But if it's Cavill, I think this could still work, even though he's a little bit older. So my pitch was you have Mr. Mxyzptlk, who is an imp from the fifth dimension. He comes to Metropolis because he's like, look at this hero who is just so good. He can do no wrong. He helps everybody, even the villain. He's helping the villains. Look at him help like Livewire and Silver Banshee over here. Like he's helping all these people. It's so impressive to me. I want to ruin his day a bit. You know, you could get Martin Short to dress up as Mxyzptlk, come onto the scene, and he's just like, okay, I'm going to challenge you. Here's like your 12 trials or something. There's all this random stuff that I'm building for you to fight. And Superman does it with ease. And this guy's like, why are you so perfect? I'm literally trying to corrupt your image, your vision. I don't understand why you're still good at it. It's like, well, because I'm Superman. I have to be. If I'm not, who will be? That's the whole point. That's the whole point of me. That's the whole point of everything I do. I have to be perfect. And I am perfect. And I'm making sure the world sees that. Now, this was my pitch because it introduces the motto of the character to the world. He can do no wrong. He's going to find a solution to the problem, which is a key thing. And I'm not even saying he's going to punch his way through the hordes of whatever Mixie throws at him. He's going to use his smarts because he has super genius in him. He's got super pitch. We could do the stupid thing from like the song where he sings the right pitch and it breaks everything because chances are we'll never get to that in a Crisis movie. And he's like, how are you going to get out of this one? So you're trapped in this maze of impeccable thing. And then boom, Clark hits the right note, sends this thing spiraling down, has to fight this new menagerie. It's kind of fun. That could be an area to explore. And Mixie is a villain we wouldn't normally see in a live action movie. So we could explore new routes for him. You know, we could try new things with Mixie because the thing with the reboot, I don't want to just do Lex again. That's the key thing to me. I don't want to do Lex. I don't want to set it solely in space. Those were the two things that are kind of mixing me up here. I feel like if we went to space too fast, we get lost. But if we were to do like this imp from an impossible dimension shows up and he's like, I don't get you. Why are you doing this? It's so fascinating to see you. I want to see if I can get you to like out of your comfort zone, do something that's going to mess you up a little bit. I can't, and I'm done. And at the end of the day, he defeats Mxyzptlk not by punching him, but just tiring him out like, well, fuck me, I guess. You know, that's what I want to see. That's what I would love to see. So, kind of before we get into everything else, well, let's talk about this a little bit. You need the reoccurring cast. I think you do. A key portion of the Superman mythology is the Clark Kent Daily Planet stuff. Now, I know there's so much like controversy and everything kind of going on in the world and who do we have playing who and what are we going to do. I want to recast completely. I want to start fresh. I want to find a new Lois. I want to find a new Lex. I like Fishburne as Perry White. If we're going to recast everybody, I'd like to recast him too. And let's get a proper Jimmy in there. You know, who's like a young guy today that could be like a Jimmy Olsen. Somebody I'd say like early 20s that could pull it off. I'm trying to find like a name for it, but get one of them in there. Being a young photographer, you can get a really fun girl playing Cat Grant who's a little bit over the top and a little bit silly, thinks Clark is a big goofball, and you have to get, like, I was talking about earlier when I did my Batmaning of for Lois Lane, I think Maude Apatow would be a fantastic Lois Lane, but because we are doing the Cavill, she's a little too young. So if that, I don't like Amy Adams. She doesn't have the right energy of a Lois Lane, so I kind of wanted to recast there, but I don't have anybody particularly in mind to cast as those people for that generation. Whatever, we'll move past it. But I want to see them in there. I think you need to show the reporter aspects of Clark and do that kind of stuff to make it work. So let's talk about a couple comic book-ish stories I'd like to see them adapt in some aspect that I think could really work for the next Superman film. Again, I'm not saying straight up adapt this. I'm just saying you could do something like this to kind of ease the audience back into what the Superman's going to be. I would like to see a Reign of the Superman story. I know it's a weird one to start with, but if we were to have Superman's existed for a long time, and now we have all these imposters showing up like a Superboy, an Eradicator, a Steel even, and Clark has to deal with them in some aspect. That could be a fun area to explore. Not my favorite choice, but something I could be on board with. Up in the Sky is a fairly new idea that I would be fine seeing. This idea that nobody's going to save this child, so Clark's going to do it. He's going to go to space and do all the things he has to do. I would really enjoy seeing that one. That would be fun. But if you want my honest opinion on the story that they should most likely adapt, because it kind of gives everybody everything they want while still keeping it true to the character of Clark, is What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. Of course, I'd update it to say Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow. I don't know if that is the story I want them to do, where it's like, okay, there's this group of heroes, I should say loosely, from the UK. Manchester Black, of course, is on the team and all of his people associated with him. And they are just pantsing Superman. They're saving the day. They're killing the enemies. They're doing all these things that Clark and Superman stand against. And the world is in favor of them because now they're looking at Superman like, wait a minute. Why isn't this guy doing the thing that Manchester and his guys are doing? Is this guy a piece of shit? Like, why isn't Superman killing these guys? And they start baiting Superman into looking like a dunce. And that's the point where Clark is like, I don't want to stoop to their level. I'm not on their level. I don't want to be on their level. But I have to teach them a lesson. And that's where you get that part in the book where Clark is like, do you know how easy it would be for me to kill you? Do you see how easily I made it look like I killed your friends? Like, it's so easy. The fact that I don't do it is my restraint because I don't believe in this. I could easily have turned to this and become the thing that you want me to be, but I'm not going to be that. If I become that, everything I stand for, everything I've worked for loses itself. Everything I've tried to do no longer fits into like these pieces. Nothing I ever tried to work on matters anymore. So I wouldn't do that. I'm like, yes. That because to me, if I wanted to give somebody a singular issue to understand the Superman idea, and I've thought about this, I just can't find the issue anywhere, but I've talked about this issue with people before, of What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. It's like, that is it, because it's Clark saying, like, I could be what you want me to be, but then I wouldn't be anything. I would just be you, like this mindless killing machine that has no empathy, no remorse. It's just like doing this for a reason I don't want to. But if I save the villain, if I do the right thing in the end, you can learn a lesson. You can improve yourself and be better, and we could all get better for it. And I respect that. I think that's a really cool idea to play with. And then when you're doing something like that, throw Lex in there, trying to like pollute the waters in a different setting. He's like, I'm running for president. My anti-Superman fund is kicking me off some high regards here. I'm looking good. I'm singing high, baby. That's what I got to do. And that would be kind of fun to see. That kind of a story. That I don't know if that's the one I'd want to see the most, but realistically, it's the one I think would show an audience what Superman represents better. But of course, they would only see him kicking the shit out of the villains and not understand, like, oh, he was doing that as a ruse. He didn't kill anybody. Now, I know the big one people are like clamoring for and talking about is a Brainiac story. You could do a multitude of Brainiac stories. There was the one that was kind of like a continuation of Superman 78. There was the one that Johns did, and, you know, Panic in the Sky and all those kind of books, and all those like those Brainiac, like those classic Superman Brainiac books. You just culminate them all together. I think there's something kind of fun about the Kandor stuff. That'd be an interesting one to explore, where Superman finds Kandor. That's a cool idea that I could get on board with exploring, because it kind of goes into this thing of like Superman trying to preserve his people while preserving his adopted people, and I think that's kind of cool. Brainiac is a good villain, a good one-off villain. I like an overarching threat of Brainiac, but I don't think you really need to do that if you wanted to, you know? Like, there's so much you could explore with that character. I think he just kind of works as just like, I am an alien invader trying to capture Metropolis to put in my menagerie of planets and places I've gone to. I think that would be fun. But again, I don't know if it's like the first rebooted movie kind of fun. I'd see it though. And that, I guess, kind of goes into the question, like, how low scale do we go for the first movie? Do we do like a Parasite story where we find this man who's kind of like being corrupted by these powers he doesn't understand, trying to terrorize Metropolis? Do we just do like a power suit thing where maybe he fights a cyborg Superman or a Metallo? I'm waiting for a good Bizarro, but you can't do Bizarro in the first movie. I'm going to look up a list of Superman villains, and let's take a look at a couple that could be good villains for like the first movie that we're looking at here. Okay, this is a list from Collider called 10 Most Overlooked Superman Villains. Cyborg Superman, I don't know if he's overlooked. Mixie, we talked about Mixie. Metallo is a great like side villain working with like a Lex or somebody. That'd be fun. Parasite. Toyman, again, like I like the idea of a Toyman. I don't know if the world could get behind it. You know? If we were to do a Toyman in live action, that might be a little too cheeky, because look, as much as I would love more than anything in this fucking world if a high budget 200 million Superman movie was just a classic golden age comic book where the character is fighting a guy that makes a giant robot that looks like a stupid robot. I'd love that more than anything, but we're not going to get that. Manchester Black is on the list. We talked about him a bit. Titano, big gorilla. Okay, I'd see that. Livewire, see, that's a fun one too. I would enjoy that a lot. She would be a great addition. Just a little bit of like a different character than we'd expect to see from there. Silver Banshee is on this list too. I would like that. If we were to do a Livewire or Silver Banshee, I would think that's awesome. But the part about that I would hesitate they would do it because Superman would be fighting a girl, and I feel like they'd be afraid of that to happen. But those would both be good. Ultra Humanite is number 1 on this list. I would love an Ultra Humanite. That would be so cool. You know, there was like that recent story of Ultra Humanite where he was like using Atomic Skull or something. Like, oh, that would be amazing. You know, oh, just a big white gorilla fighting Superman. Those would all be great. Out of anything on that list, I could see a Mixie. I could see a Livewire or a Parasite as the first villain. But again, I just don't know. Like, I don't know how many people would be interested in seeing some of those. It's very complex. It's not that Superman doesn't have like a good rogues gallery, because he does have a good rogues gallery. It's just some people would be afraid to see where we could go with it. You know, I don't think we need to do Zod again. I don't know where else we'd go. It's very recent, but the one I would do, I think would be a good story. Again, my problem with doing the Warworld Saga stuff, which is just Superman versus Mongol, is like it feels too early. But I guess you could like juxtapose it with the identity of like Superman helping Earth, but it's hard to help a world that's built on war. You know, that could be a fun story to play with. I'd be interested in seeing something like that. Mongol's a great villain. If you want your answer to like Thanos that's not Darkseid, because we don't really want to do Darkseid, you could do Mongol, where it's just like this guy who has a big planet where people fight for him. That could be cool. I would be so on board with that more than a lot of stuff. If you want to do Magog, I guess you could find a way to make that work. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I just feel like nobody really wants to see Lex again. Like, we've done Lex so much. At this point, it's like not interesting, but I don't know. It's complex, isn't it? Because they're all good characters, but which one do you really want to stick with? I'm going to say for like the first movie, Manchester Black, it should be. It should be Manchester Black and his people and the elite. If it's not, I would like to see like maybe a Metallo and Parasite or Silver Banshee would be really fun to throw in there. Just those kind of characters would be cool. But I don't know. There's just so many weird choices that you could throw in there. I would like it. Or another one that might be a little like bizarre. I say Bizarro loosely, because they did a great Bizarro story already in Superman and Lois. So another one I would love to see them do, but I don't know if they ever will, because it might be a little too on the nose for just Generation, and they hate stuff like that where it's like so obvious, like we're homaging something, and they hate it, is Superman smashes the Klan. Like, I think adapting that kind of, look, loosely adapting. I'm not saying we're straight up going to have Superman fight the KKK, but maybe you do like a little bit of a prejudice thing where Superman's trying to defend people who are being picked on and they're minorities and the people doing it are assholes. Just saying that might be something to explore. That might be an area to play with. Something about that. Maybe we need to go a little too on the nose so people can actually understand what we're talking about. Maybe that's what we need. Maybe that's the thing that's missing. Maybe that's the thing that we should have talked about for a long time. Is just like getting an actual Superman that is fighting Nazis, you know? I think that's what we have to do. I think that's where we have to go. I think that might be it. That might be it. Sadly, that might be what we need to do. There's a secret identity, which is fun, but no, we're not going to do that. Books are just cool. I like it. While we're here, while we're sitting down talking about stuff, let's look up the best Superman comics of all time. And let's take a look at those and see what we could write from them. Whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, we don't really need to play with that one. For the Man Who Has Everything would be a very fascinating one to do, actually. I'd be okay with that. Superman for All Seasons, I don't know. And we got Superman Red Sun. We don't really need to do that one, I would say. Secret Identity, The Last Son of Krypton. All-Star Superman is one I could definitely see them having influence on, where it's like, we should just do that. But it's like, you can't do that because that's the end of the Superman story. Doing that is the wrong area to go. Secret Origin, I guess. Jeff Johns' Secret Origin could work. It's kind of a little bit more about like Clark doing stuff, which is kind of fun. Can't do Death. Now that we do Death. Ooh, that's a fun idea. I'd be okay exploring like a Legion of Superheroes thing where like the heroes of like the future come back to witness the best one of all time. I'd be okay exploring that. I feel like that'd be a fun area to explore. I know we're never going to do it, but I would be 100% okay if they said like, well, Clark and Lois have a son named John, and we're doing a young Clark movie where he's helping his son learn how to be a hero. We got a TV show about that, but I'd be okay if they tried it. Or you know what? If they did like, I guess if they took one element of All-Star Superman, where it's like, was it Hercules that he's like fighting in that? And he's like, hey, you should do the trials, dude. And it's like, okay. And he does them, and they're like, whoa, I can't believe he just did the trials. That'd be cool. Like the Trials of Superman movie. Oh, that would be sick. I would love to see that. Trials of the Superman. Oh, that'd be cool. That'd make me smile. And that's all that matters, is that I'm happy. But again, Superman versus the Elite, or whatever. What's so funny about Truth, Justice, in the American Way? That's the one I think they should do. I feel like that's the kind of story, too, that Cavill would know, where he's like, that's how we represent the character. And then you do that, then you jump into like, okay, Lex now has a bunch of people at his disposal. Now, okay, so here's the layout of the trilogy in essence. We have Superman versus the Elite. What's so funny about Truth, Justice, in the American Way? We do that story. Clark defeats them. Lex is like doing his campaign. So suddenly it becomes like a Lex and Clark rivalry story. Where the next one, okay, Lex is kind of funding people. He's going to step a little bit forward into the limelight as an anti-Superman force, seeing how far that gets him. Suddenly, he is sending money to supervillains. So we got people like Parasite being paid off by him, Metallo being paid off by him. The Toyman is one of his manufacturers. The Toyman might even make him a powerful suit. And then, in the final part of this trilogy, Clark fights Lex. They have an actual showdown, and in that we see that Lex takes Clark's DNA. He might be doing something with it. We'll get to that later. But also what happens is we see this new planet kind of shows up into space for some reason. And it's like a cube. And they're like, why is there a cube planet in there? So then, well, we think Lex used the DNA from Clark to make Bizarro. Bizarro is actually here on his own accord. So you have a three-way fight between Lex, Bizarro, and Superman. That's the first trilogy. It's all good. The end of the first trilogy, he marries Lois. What's the next trilogy? I'm glad you asked. The next trilogy we're calling the Spaceways trilogy. He's married to Lois, so she has her own spin-off series on HBO Max where she's going to go do some things. Maybe the Greg Rucka book. Maybe she's just going to go around and be a great fucking reporter. Because I want an individual Lois story can work, please and thank you. Let's do more of them. Clark goes to space. What's he doing there? Well, he's doing up in the sky. First, he's going to rescue this girl from the clutches of this evil alien race. Then what's he going to do? He's going to have an encounter with Brainiac trying to take this one planet. Maybe it's something similar to Kandor. Maybe it's Thanagar. Maybe he's trying to take some weird city on a planet. Then we do Superman on Warworld, and then he's going to go fight Mongol and all that stuff. Or maybe you could even change it up. Maybe he doesn't fight Brainiac right away. Maybe somebody goes to this planet trying to scope it out for Brainiac, and then you have him fight Lobo in space, and then the final movie after Warworld will be like the big thing where Superman fights Brainiac, and maybe Brainiac and Lex get into like some weird conflict, and Lex tries to take over Brainiac, and it results in Lex being destroyed, and he loses his run for presidency, and then we come back, and Superman becomes a daddy. And then we can do the young Superman, Superboy, little John Kent learning to be the hero, taking on new responsibilities, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, all that matters is we get a good Superman movie that focuses on cool characters doing something a little bit different than what we've seen before, where he's a good guy and not killing people and does something good. But who knows? Chances are this could easily be fucked up, and it probably will be, because my hopes in these movies dwindle each and every day. I don't know how this one's going to go. It could be well done, but I genuinely don't know. I genuinely don't know how this could go. That's kind of cool, I guess. It's also worrisome. It's also very, very worrisome. So, what do you guys think? What would you like to see happen for the next Superman movie? I don't want it to be All-Star Superman. If anything, give me the Trials of the Superman. Give me him beating the shit out of Manchester Black and teaching him a lesson. Or hell, don't make one. Just keep Superman and Lois going. Or just make it a Lois Lane TV show. I don't know. Make stuff. Let's just do Kingdom Come for some reason. Fuck it. So I do like to end things with some recommendations for you guys, because there's a lot of cool stuff out there we could talk about. First off, Shin Godzilla is so freaking good. I recommend checking that out. It is epic. A couple Superman stories for you to read. Of course, I'm going to say Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. It's a really good book that Alan Moore wrote, surprisingly. It's really weird to see his name on something like that, but it's very fun. It's like a collective edition with The Man Who Has Everything, which is another really fun book. Superman, What's So Funny About Truth Dresses the American Way. You could find a digital version very easily. It's a very fantastic book, and I think worth checking out if you want to understand it a little bit more. Superman 78, the comic book, is very fun. That wrapped up, you can get a big trade of that. Sequel to the Reeve stuff. It's really cool. And of course, Superman the Animated Series, which does everything we're talking about and then some. Books are fun, hey? I love it. I love it. Comic books are great, and this character is well worth talking about, so I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we could take a minute to explore the Superman mythos, because he's well worth every penny we spend on him. Let's hope it gets better. I really hope it gets better, because we deserve a good Superman movie in live action. And look, the TV show is perfect, but again, there's the CW shit going on, so I'm hesitant to see what's going to happen with that show, but it's really good and well worth checking out. So thank you guys for listening to this rambling on about Superman movies for a minute. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and as always, I will catch you in the next one. Up, and away, baby. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.